Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me in another video. So today we're going to be talking about Chanel Fall Winter 2026, and whenever Chanel releases a new collection, I think it's a major moment in fashion, whether you're completely on board with this new era or you prefer the past eras. Since Matthieu Blazy has joined the brand, it has been one of the biggest creative shifts from a designer stepping into a house of this scale. For decades, Chanel has been defined by a very specific visual language under Karl Lagerfeld, and then continued on by Virginie Viard. There was definitely a sense of continuity in the world of Chanel, a very recognizable aesthetic that shaped how we understood the brand. Every collection was different, but we understood it. But now Matthieu Blazy, he's taking a totally different approach. And Matthieu Blazy said something very interesting in an interview with Kathy Horan. He asked this question, what if Chanel was not Chanel? And I think that question is exactly what we're seeing play out right now. It feels like a break from even generations of what we have come to know and understand Chanel to be, to look like. Instead, we are watching his own vision, his own language, his own codes he's bringing forward to the house. Because now that we're 4 collections in, we are seeing a lot of themes. We are seeing a continuation of his design elements and his own visual language. Historically, it's very rare to see, again, a brand of this size go through such, I think, a very visible and very radical transformation. And I think this idea of transformation was very clear in the theme of this collection. There was this symbolism of the caterpillar and the butterfly, the idea of change, of moving from one state into another. On a very surface level, it speaks to this metaphor, how Coco Chanel dresses women from day to night. But I think on a broader level, it's more of a statement, I think, of Blazy's intention for the brand. Even the set is reflected in that idea. These colorful cranes, the sense of reconstruction. If the first collection felt like the end of Chanel, this idea of the last day of Chanel, almost a dismantling, a moment where the past was being questioned and disrupted, even destroyed. This one feels like the aftermath. And of course, within all of that, we have to talk about the bags, because at Chanel, the bags are always a part of the story. And the very first bag we see is this trapezoidal flat bag. The shape, it's quite noteworthy this season for Fall Winter 2026. We saw this at Demna's Gucci with these bags. Again, more of the structured trapezoidal shape, wider at the base, but then it tapers at the top, not into like a perfect triangle, but think of like the Hermes Kelly, but instead of that sort of delicate lady-like top handle, it's a shoulder strap. With this first look here, you see Matthieu Blazy, this theme of reduction. He's removed the chain, the quilting that we often associate with Chanel. It's a leather strap. Also, the quilt's very flat. Also, this is in a burgundy, very much a noticeable Matthieu Blazy color he's brought to the brand. We are seeing this as a theme with even his first show and other collections at this point. It's also noteworthy, we saw this heavily used at Bottega. We're seeing a lot of the colors and themes that we saw from his time at Bottega continued here. Again, a different change from, I think, Virginie's very ultra girly colors. Think of 80s and 90s Barbie vibes, lots of logos. This era, not so much about that. Also comes in this mid-tone brown. It's not as deep of a brown, closer to a camel. It's more of like a mid-tone. And then we have this grained quiltless leather, also a smaller size and similar proportions in this forest green suede. That's the first bag we saw. The second bag style we saw was this hobo style, similar to, I think, of like a Celine Romy or a Prada Amy, and it has this zipper and also this smaller CC. We're not seeing a big logo. Another color he's leaning into since his first collection, it's kind of this like sandy beige. Again, this is a color we're seeing at other brands, but this kind of sandy beige, but especially in the suede. Also comes in a black, that mid-tone brown. This comes in a caviar or like, is it grain leather, but in that flat quilt, a forest green. So again, as I described in my last video when looking at the debut collection with the bags now being available, I feel like there's definitely a strategy that the brand has. We're not just seeing a new creative change, we're seeing a totally different strategy. I think Chanel is appealing to a potential customer that may be considering a brand like Prada, like the Prada Amy, or a brand that may consider Celine, like the Celine Romy, but this is Chanel. We're seeing designs that feel very similar to those kinds of houses and maybe that kind of consumer, but brought to Chanel with injections of Chanel codes. And I think Matthieu Blazy is a very strategic designer. I think there's a lot of business strategy put into a lot of these designs. You wouldn't really see Chanel trying to like lean into the aesthetics, the design styles of like a Prada or Celine. Again, it's something we're seeing the brand continue with for several collections now. And next we have this hobo style. So it has this rounded base, actually kind of reminds me, this base base of like the Gucci Jackie. Slimmer profile that's a little bit more structured, not like a Bottega hobo bag. Like it's more of a structured kind of hobo bag like the Gucci Jackie. It has this chain framing the bag, these flattened quilts, and we have the chain strap, and this beautiful forest green we're seeing throughout this collection also comes in this white as well. There's also this crescent pouch, so it's like this semicircle crescent pouch that comes in that sandy suede color. It has this metal mouth opening. You ever so slightly see the tiny CC. It reminds me of a little dumpling. It also comes in this mock croc deep midnight blue. Next we have this neo reissue is what I'm gonna call it. It's like this reissue, but we are seeing the reissue chain vertically leading to the turn lock. I've seen this used before in other accessories, but I think what is also noteworthy is the reissue. Maybe it's the lighting. It looks thinner to me. Again, it's like in line with what can Matthieu Blazy strip away. It also comes in this beigey color. And then we have this maxi, what I'm gonna call the reduced flap. I don't know what else to call it. Again, this is a style that we saw with the first collection. It's available now. It doesn't have the chain. There's no quilting. We initially saw it in grained leather, but we're seeing again one of the themes with Matthieu Blazy is the mock croc. When we saw this bag, it was styled on people like ASAP Rocky, so I imagine it's going to be something that we're going to see on more of the guys, more of like Chanel's roster of menswear ambassadors. I know for me personally, a bag like this, when I think about the weight, when I think about the shoulder on that, also I just think it would just be dragging my shoulder down just for me. But again, I could see it on a guy like ASAP Rocky. Also think about what you want to put in a bag like that with those thinner straps. Again, the mock croc is now part of, I think, Matthieu Blazy's new design language. Of course, Chanel has done croc and like real croc before. They stopped doing that. They've done mock croc before, but I think for Matthieu Blazy, it is absolutely one of his key signatures. It brings a sense of texture, a sense of shine. It's not going to, of course, cost as much as real croc. Of course, these bags, like especially in this size, it's going to set you back like around 10K. There's also this smaller red croc, mock croc version. We also have a different take on the classic flap. The top flap, it's the Chanel CC, but then we see the bottom flap, it's the reissue. So it's a blending of these eras. We're also seeing a duality with the chains, the reissue chain and the classic leather chain strap. So blending of these past eras. So we're seeing it in this black, in this muddy color. Next we have the smaller flap, but I think there's this interesting side profile. Like you can see the CCs from the side. It's smaller, but it's subtle. I feel more brands are inserting their branding on the sides of their shoulder bags just to make the branding visible in a new way. Also, again, with this kind of oxblood, as well as we're seeing it in this black, in this kind of camel color. Next, we have this clutch, no straps. It's quite minimal. It does have this ever so slightly small CC tab. It comes in this black as well as this reddish brown in the mock croc. Also, what's noteworthy is we're seeing these food minadières. Again, continuing on with that Mété d'Art collection with the peanuts, the acorns. We're seeing this pomegranate. I think this is like a coffee bean. I don't know. It won't even hold a lipstick. Definitely not a card. We also have a few other minadières. We've got this quilted tortoiseshell clutch, as well as this mermaid clutch with these fish scales, this pearlescent top handle bag with this embellished gold handle. We also have this mock croc clutch, more of this theme of reduction. It's the timeless clutch, but without the quilting, without the puffiness. Instead, the emphasis more on the texture for this bag. The mock croc, the croc illusion, I think is what they're describing this as. The focus is on the materials and less about the established codes of typical Chanel bags. When we kind of strip away a lot of those codes, doesn't immediately read as Chanel to me. Like if you told me this was Celine bag or even like a Bottega bag, I would believe it. We're seeing Matthieu Blazy's strategy here. Next, we have this corner CC clutch. Now, this is a style I actually really like. It's in this kind of muddier brown. Again, reminds me of like tones we'd see from the row. I will say though, based on what we know from the pricing, these bags go for $7,300. I was thinking when I saw this bag in the SLG section on the Chanel website, I was like, oh my gosh, maybe it's gonna be priced like a walk. No, it's double the price of a walk almost. How could I be so delusional? I don't know, I can't girl math these bags. Even the ones that I'm really drawn to, it's really hard for me to girl math them. Bag also comes in a red, a really cool looking like crushed metallic, crinkled silver, and then it also comes in this plain black. We also have this crafty classic flap, very Matthieu-Coded. It's like, you know, Jackson Pollock painting. You're seeing the layers, you're seeing the splatters, the density. It's one of these things you want to look up and like see all of the intricate details. Next we have this thin flap with this leather strap and this chain strap. It's almost like the leather strap, it's like almost the width of the bag. It's very thin. We're seeing ways in which the Chanel bag, it's reduced, but like we're also seeing this new layer of texture in this like mock croc. But this also does come in a smooth black leather, so there's that. It does come in the smaller version, more mini proportions, and then also mock croc. And then we have this metallic frame flat bag, quite structured and even more emphasized, like that structure in this bag. It's more emphasized with the frame, that metal frame. Comes in this black and this like taupey beige. Next we have this hobo style. So it has this hobo shape, but then it has these side CCs. I feel like I've seen this bag before. Feels like, again, a business strategy bag. Comes in this burgundy as well as this olive mock croc. Next we have this classic flap. So it's like this maxi flap in this like toffee caramel kind of color. There was a time period where everyone was so obsessed with those caramel flaps during the pandemic. But yeah, this is in like this mock croc, but it has more of a, actually, maybe it's the lighting, but this looks more of like a matte finish. We also have another maxi flap in this red, black, creamy fur kind of combination. And then we have this mini flap with these sequins and then these kind of like frayed, sheerly plucked feather bits like sticking out. And then we have another sequin bag that looks like something very like biological to me. You're zooming into a microscope and you're seeing cells. Then we have this tan mini suede and then this iridescent embellished flap with this gold top handle as well as these metal floral embellishments. And then in this medium classic flap we have these red florals against this pale teal. Again, this is very much a color combination that Matthieu Blazy is leaning into. More embellished florals on this green classic flap and this metal top handle. And then we have this embroidered classic flap, some kind of silk satin, very delicate material, very delicately embroidered. And then we have this crafty experimental flap, looks very cool, artsy, modern art. And then we have this experimental like brown and gray, quiggly experimental bits of dust. And then we have this surf executive tote. We saw this bag with the first date with the debut collection in that really beautiful minty color. I feel like this is another style that we're seeing a lot of right now in handbags, these kind of shoulder style totes. Again, referencing the surf executive tote, but again, it's like the shoulder carry that brings it, makes it a little bit more now. We also have this bucket bag with this leather top handle as well as this chain strap, quite structured. It has the turn lock closure on the top, a little bit different. And then we have this new take on that kind of supermodel weekender tote, but in smaller proportions and also reduced. Smaller logo, took away the chain straps, this grain leather instead of the quilting. It's more, I think, of a everyday kind of carry bag instead of like a weekender bag. So yeah, there's that. And then finally, we've got this tubular bag, and this is a style that we saw them promoting from like the Métier d'Art collection. These kind of tubular east-west bags are very in, and we're seeing it in this beautiful iridescent pastel finish, the mock croc. So those are the new bags, and overall what I find interesting about these bags is how much I think they reflect a very current style, current look. In the past, Chanel could really exist on its own planet. It had its own very specific visual language, like the ultra feminine, very cutesy heart bags, star bags, the heavy use of logos. And then alongside that, you'd also have very practical bags, everyday bags like the 22 or the 25, but they were very clear and visibly Chanel. Like you would immediately recognize those bags as having those classic house codes. What it feels like Matthieu Blazy is doing is he's really stripping the bags back and introducing his own new design language. A lot of that language, I think, comes through the craft, the texture, the material experimentation, and his use of color, where Virginie would lean into a lot of these brighter or 80s, early 90s Barbie-like styles and colors. Blazy, I think we're seeing move towards something that in some ways feels a little bit more grounded, but I think can also feel quite artsy and experimental. We're seeing new combinations of colors like these reds and these mint greens. We're seeing burgundies, camels, different neutrals. But I also think there's a play on materials, new finishes, mock croc being a major theme, different textures that I think give the bags more of a tactile feeling. But in terms of silhouettes, what stands out is I think the bags now look very contemporary in a way that Chanel historically didn't need to be. That's also part of this broader business strategy. It feels like Chanel is intentionally trying to appeal to this different market of luxury consumers, and I think that's part of why Blazy is at the brand now. I think he speaks to where fashion is now. He's bringing Chanel closer to, I think honestly, where fashion has been moving for the past decade or longer. Because when I look at these bags, I honestly see a current collage of different design styles. I see echoes of Bottega, I see Celine, I see Loewe, I see also the influence of Miuccia Prada in the fashion, I see Phoebe Philo, the Row, even an appeal towards the Hermes client. But I think Blazy is filtering those references through his own sensibility, through his own design language. I do think some people who never bought into Chanel in the past may now feel drawn more to it than ever. And I also think there is this major media hype moment happening, which I think deserves its own video, honestly, because I think the fashion media is overwhelmingly enthusiastic about this new era. I don't think I've ever seen such enthusiasm like this at this scale. But I also think about the past Chanel customer, how some of the reactions have been very mixed. Some are actually, I think, quite excited because maybe they always wanted a Bottega or a Loewe or a Celine bag, but now that we have similar silhouettes that have a double C logo, because again, Chanel does have brand loyalists, but at the same time, there are also longtime Chanel clients who feel very disconnected with this new style. So it's a very interesting moment, but one thing I do think is very clear, Chanel is being extremely tactical in its strategy right now. And whether you love the direction or not, I have to acknowledge, I think Matthieu Blazy is a very intelligent designer, he's a very strategic designer, and Chanel is definitely going to be the most hyped brand of 2026. But I would love to know your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for joining me in another video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!